broaden your base, faculty involved, the strategic planning process, and including this one.
Yeah, I sort of get the broadening your base as two parts.
I just want to make sure you got this message.
It was a two-part, so
Okay.
it's a, yeah, don't worry.
Okay.
Essentially 3 parts.
Yeah, thank you all for coming to talk. I really appreciate your message. I think we need to be doing more to broaden our base. I've always viewed climate change as a social justice issue. I think that climate change will threaten all of the social progress we've made as a society in the last 50 years. And we need to do more with that message, and I'd love to have you come talk to our group about that more. My question is more about a larger question about divestment as a tactic to fight climate change. We know that we don't have much time left to make massive changes as a society, and we view divestment as a tactic that will be effective at transforming the American political landscape so that we have climate policy. That's not a fact, that's sort of a theory. That's our theory of change, is that by demonizing the fossil fuel industry and weakening their power, it will be more possible for sort of rational, science-based approach to happen in policymaking, and at the same time strengthening sort of civic engagement and having more public demand, like this 20,000 person rally next month in DC to stop this pipeline. So I guess I would love any of you all to comment on, do you believe that divestment is an effective strategy for political change in this specific issue, and how and why you think that?
During the civil rights movement, the problem in creating change were not so much the opponents of civil rights, but the friends of civil rights. That's a point that Dr. King made in his letter from the Birmingham jail. It was moderates who agreed with this principle, but didn't want to do anything about it, did not want to put their own behavior, their own decisions, their own policies on the line. And that's why he was accused and attacked of being a rabble-rouser and somebody who was destroying the country. Our problem in the climate movement is that there are way too many people who agree with us who aren't doing anything. And I would specifically say many too many people in power who aren't doing anything. They read the paper, they say, tut, 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 this is terrible. But then when it comes down to Tufts investments or their own investments, by the way, anyone you're talking to about divestment, you should ask them where their personal investments are, if you think there are any. So it is, as an issue, it is sharpening the debate. So that's one thing. The second thing is that divestment leads to other things. What happened is, first, people said, well, what's going on? And I'm just going to South Africa, for example. What's going on over there? Gee, I don't know, let's find out. And then they got to, let's support the Sullivan principles. Let's not remove our operations, let's support the Sullivan principles, which were workplace equality. Now that's not good, that's not having an effect, let's divest. What else can we do? And then they passed what were called selective purchasing rules. They said, well, if we don't invest in IBM, maybe we shouldn't buy from IBM, or GM, or Mobile. Guess when the companies suddenly reacted? Is when they suddenly realized they were going to be on a blackout list for purchasing as the result of prior commitments to divestment. So it's that consistency rule that I was saying. Once you do this, then it becomes necessary to do that and necessary to do this. So I think it's not an effective tactic all by itself. As part of a package of tactics, as part of a intensity of commitment, passion, it can start to move people who otherwise would be happy to sit where they are, even if they think they're in agreement. And I really want to include the United States Congress. It is absolutely shocking and disgraceful that the United States has not done more on this. And partly because they feel their inaction can be pursued with complacency. They think they can do whatever they want, and they will never hear from you. And so far, they've been right. So that's what needs to change.
As far as another tactic, also, decreasing subsidies for fossil fuels. It's kind of a dual, let's just take their profits back.
We've got several questions. Let's
I've read a lot about
run up against the magnitude of climate change and divestment as a place in a conversation with a person where they just shut down and they say, oh, it's too much, I can't handle talking about this, I don't want to be involved, I support you, but let's just stop talking about it. And it struck me that the apartheid government is a very contained entity. Businesses had some funds invested in South Africa and funds invested elsewhere, and it was a very tight investment and divestment they could make. But climate change affects everything we do: plastic, oil, the entire transportation system, all the energy infrastructure. So as soon as somebody, when you approach somebody who is not very engaged about it, it becomes overwhelming very quickly, and it's difficult. It's difficult to find language that doesn't overwhelm your new friend with doom and gloom. How do you think that changes the ways that we need to spread our message and to recruit new people to the cause? And also, how do you think it changes the way that we approach people in power? Do you think that it increases the amount, the leadership necessary? It makes it a more appealing thing to be involved with as a leader because it's really huge? Or do you think the leaders have the same reaction as an average recruit?
Oh, thanks. Wow, Tufts alumni really know how to ask good questions, don't they? It's an amazing set of questions. I'm not going to try and answer them all. Again, I come back to several points that I and others have made. Number one, climate change is what's called a wicked problem. It is so intractable. It's not like, CFCs. Ban CFCs and you have an immediate effect on the ozone layer. So it is, and it's not a direct effect like apartheid, which is a very identifiable set of policies that can be dismantled. This demands a root and branch paradigm shift, put the word in, a paradigm shift, not policy change, but a paradigm shift in the way that we actually operate on this planet. And that's the problem. Now, we are 4.5% of the world's population, and we're consuming 25% of the world's resources. That, to me, is the biggest security threat to this planet, not global terrorism. That's the biggest security threat. And the greater issue, of course, is that India and China want to consume our case, etc., etc. So yes, this is a massive, massive sort of issue, but it has to be tied, I think. We can't just talk about climate change without talking about, the need to develop more sustainable communities, the need to change the way we think about the way our cities currently run. I mean, at the moment, certainly in urban planning terms, one of the key concepts is walkability. People want walkable neighbourhoods. A lot of what is good about sustainability, people want. But here, certainly in the US, the choices are not there. And let's just stop for once and for all that Europeans are more sustainable than Americans, or that they have a gene for sustainability, or it's in their DNA. They don't. It's just that their cities are designed so much more around sustainability. There are many more options to be sustainable in Europe. So it's not that Europeans are any more. So I would say that for us here in the United States, there's several challenges, multi-level challenges. Number one is accepting, as George Bush almost did, that we have an addiction. That he said addiction to foreign oil. We've got an addiction to oil, period. And that needs to change. We need to use the ingenuity of this nation to rethink the way that we move around in cities. We are, by and large, large part of the population is in urban areas. A huge amount of change can be brought about. And it's change that actually most people would support. How we retrofit the suburbs and rural America is another huge challenge. But again, these are you know, these are partly design issues, they're partly behavioural issues, but I certainly think that one of the big issues that we really have to do is to think about, you know, what sustainability means, not just to those of us like myself who can afford to pay like triple glazed windows, but what about those people for whom, if we say less is more, you know, you need to cut down, they're going to look at us and say, I've never had anything to cut down. I'm not going to cut down until, you know, until I've eaten like you, until I've filled my face at a drop, and then maybe I'll cut down. So how do we message sustainability to those people who've never had anything and who really want stuff? Yeah, that's another part of the challenge. So I think there's some good news and there's some not so good news, but we can certainly start, certainly, you know, the members of the planning department who are here, Jonathan and Marcy, you know, part of their life is going to be dedicated to helping us replan the way we live so that we can live more sustainably. And that surely is going to be one of the huge challenges, I think, for American cities. But the ones that are doing it, San Francisco, Vancouver, Boston, these are the cool places to be. These are the places where young people want to go. So, you know, let's read the messages, let's think about how we message this, and, you know, let's move on with all pace.
I just want to say I agree. It's very overwhelming, and that's exactly what Bob does. A new economy. That's what we need, right? So it's everything. But if you're trying to approach a moderate person about this, you can't say everything is wrong. Every single thing we do is wrong. And I think that's part of the beauty of divesting from fossil fuels. It really targets one thing we need to do to make some sort of difference, and I think change follows money. So I think it's a good place to be.
How many of you have seen the movie Lincoln? Every generation has a set of really huge problems. And it's sort of up to that generation to face up to them. And so, you know, in a strange way, slavery was a cheap form of energy that was economically profitable and supporting an entire region of the country, which no one in that region, except the people affected, wanted to change. And yet, through a very complex and difficult process, where some people were deemed obnoxious for even raising it, we gradually addressed that question. Now, I don't have an expectation that climate change is going to lead to a civil war in the United States, but that gives some indication of how profound a challenge it was to the paradigm. My grandparents' generation, my father's, and just a little older generation had to deal with World War II, another massive challenge that they, believe me, they would have rather not faced, but they had to face it. So I have some sympathy for the issue of people feel overwhelmed. There's a lot to be overwhelmed by. On the other hand, I think we really have to dig down deep and we would be worthy of our time in addressing this question. It's inconvenient, as Al Gore said. We might rather pretend it wasn't there, but it is there. And we are not marginalized. Therefore, we're in a special privileged position to exercise power that's not available to a lot of other people.